But to start off, I will give you a little bit of my background, which is that I have about a decade, give or take, of experience in remanufacturing, actually, in building circular markets. I've worked with and for multiple startups in different capacities, either advising or actually being on the ground floor as part of a startup, small businesses. And I've worked in this space and with economic development departments and other entities like that for definitely over 10 years. So today we're going to be talking about how to identify and engage your economic development ecosystem and what that is. This presentation is not going to be a comprehensive list of all of the resources that you might identify or that might be particular to you and your business, but it is meant to open your mind to the possibilities so you can start identifying and engaging with those resources in your ecosystem. So you can figure out what you have available to you and how to actually access it, or at least start approaching that conversation. And so to begin that, what is an economic development ecosystem? Pretty simply, it is an ecosystem. So if we will probably remember from from our youth, looking at ecosystems when we did in, maybe middle school, high school science, maybe as a hobby project. Basically, an ecosystem is usually marked off by a geographic area, but it's an area, you target it with a sector. And then it is the system of how the living organisms in that area exchange value or materials. So the simplest concept of that is the carbon cycle, which is literally that humans, we breathe in oxygen and we output, so we intake oxygen and we output CO2. Plants intake CO2 and output oxygen. Super simple, super small, but it gives you this is the basic idea of an ecosystem. Ecosystems can get infinitely more complex from that, obviously. And when you're looking at an ecosystem, when you want to try to understand it, one of the ways to do that is to break it out by material. So literally, you pull out a single material and you track its exchange in nature. So we did that on the left here with the carbon cycle. You can also do that in an economy. So on the right in this top map, what we have here is a overview of how the majority of aluminum materials exchange. So this is literally bauxite mining, refining into aluminum, and then how that material is formed, processed, and then recycled and forged down into raw aluminum, and then keeps going through that circular ecosystem and keeps being made into new products. And so, as you can see, we're forming an ecosystem here. At each stage, there is a material item that the living organisms, you, me, and all of the people that work in the aluminum industry, move these items around our geography, which is the entire globe. And so in an economic development ecosystem, it's the same concept. You're tracking the exchange of value, but we're blowing open, we're looking at value not only as a material, not only as carbon or aluminum, but as any value that can be exchanged. So, or tracked really. So that can be in partnerships, in revenue, in jobs, in workforce development, in new products, in processes that create more industry, or in processes that eliminate waste. All of those things help make a healthier ecosystem. And that's really how I hope that you'll begin looking at that as you go forward, is that you are an organism in an ecosystem. You have the ability to affect it, and you have the ability to create and make your own ecosystems. So going back to that statement of value can be represented and tracked in a lot of different ways, not just materials. Actually, I'll go back to this slide. So when we pull out, as I was saying, when we want to study an ecosystem and understand it, when we start pulling out individual value chains or material chains, in nature, what we call that is a food chain. So that would be such as the grass gets eaten by the cows are eaten by humans, and humans, when we go back to the earth, we essentially get eaten by the earth and put back into the cycle. And so that is a supply chain. That is a supply chain of material. And beyond that, there are supply chains are multidimensional. In a sense, supply chains are everything. So anytime that you want to look at any individual food chain in your ecosystem, any individual way that one type of value moves along, that's how you're going to look at it. And it's going to be very helpful to do that. So supply chains are multidimensional. Let's look at a specific example, and that will kind of help us understand what we're talking about here. So we have on here, this is basically an expanded ecosystem for a reusable food container manufacturer. So when you're a manufacturer, and we're going to look at manufacturing specifically because that's my background and a lot of the examples that I have to pull from, but I've worked with so many businesses that are not manufacturers, that are service providers, that are software developers. This applies to any industry. And really the homework here would be take this model home, put yourself in this chain, and start filling in your other bubbles. So on the left, we're starting as a reusable food container manufacturer. So from the basics in supply chain, there's already supplies there that we've got to think about. They have to have as a manufacturer, you have to have workforce to manufacture your product. So who are your workforce suppliers? Those are going to be schools, those are going to be training centers, universities. You're also going to have raw material suppliers. Do you manufacture out of plastic? Are you metal forming? Do you manufacture out of glass? Do you have both business units? And then you're also going to have machine, part, and process suppliers, meaning the suppliers of the actual chemicals that you use in your process or the machines that you use in your process to create those things. You'll notice after you actually get all of those items together, you use them in your manufacturing to actually make the reusable food containers. Now, a key point there is distribution. How does your product, whatever it is, your product or service, make it to your customers? And so a next step in your supply chain is our distributors and home delivery services. And as you're going through here, you're going to think so these are going to be the distributors that you're paying to make sure, or that if your customer pays shipping to make sure that the item gets to them. But there are going to be some that will have maybe eco-friendly branding. If you're a reusable food container manufacturer, you are positioned in an eco-friendly and eco-branded space. So you're going to want to identify the other players in that space. And most likely, they're going to be the best distributors for you as well, because they're not only going to have expertise that's pertinent to your space, but they're going to have other partnerships and contacts that you will also want to meet and also want to talk with and work with. So from there, the pull, and if you'll notice, everything is on the pull here. We're being pulled along from left to right. And on the right, that's this, sorry, I have to move my little display here, eco market needs and interests. So we go from distributors to our waste conscious direct consumers. So if you have a direct consumer model, which this in particular, this food manufacturer that I did this chart for did. And then also eco-branded catering and restaurants. So they had B2C and B2B happening on both levels. And it's the same thing. There's a little ecosystem happening from each of these branches. Your waste conscious consumers that are buying that because of the eco branding, they're also purchasing from other eco branded brands and eco branded distributors. And same thing with your eco branded catering and restaurants. They have their own supply chain and their own little ecosystem that's branched off of here. And really, it is in your best interest to learn about and understand all of these people and all of these steps in your supply chain, because they're all pulled by, in the same way that you are, this eco-branded market need and interest, which is backed by and pulled by its own ecosystem of other organizations, lawmakers, and people that play in the regulation space, as well as composting and eco services that take it from that step to the next cycle. So yes, and please use the chat feature for networking also. And as we go along, by the way, if you have questions, it was mentioned at the top, but if you missed it, please do use the Q&A feature. We'll be going over those at the end. Feel free to put them in at any time. So that brings us to, all right, we're looking at this ecosystem. So you want to build partnerships to build your supply chain. And remember, supply chain, that's just a term of literally anything you need a supply of. Your supply, the chain is how you're accessing it. And in many cases, like in here, you're going to be part of someone else's supply chain. So for this reusable food container manufacturer, they're part of eco-branded catering and restaurants supply chain. They actually supply the containers that those companies put food into and use. So again, this is not exclusive to manufacturing. This is any business that you any business that you have, whether you're providing services or products or a combination thereof. You have suppliers. All of your suppliers have suppliers, and you are a supplier for your customer. So when we pack all that down, boil that all down, and we try to put it in some bullet point concepts here, that is where follow the money comes from. You are, everyone in your ecosystem is following the money, is following the value. And so everyone in that ecosystem, you want to talk to them. You want to know about the life cycle of your materials and your customers. You want to know about the life cycle of everyone in this map. However your map looks, you want to really understand it. And the clearer map that you have, not only the better decisions that you can make to navigate for your own business, but the faster that you will see and be able to capitalize on new opportunities. Follow the momentum. So that brings us to another thing where we're looking at ecosystems. Ecosystems have a natural momentum to them. Everyone wants to start their own new thing, and that's great. Especially entrepreneurs, especially small business owners. It's why you did it. It's why you're here. That's awesome. And I mean in no way to discourage that. It is more recognizing that when we can go farther when we go together. So if you can find your people, sit at their table and ask and listen. There is so much more value to be gained from listening and asking questions about opportunities for you, opportunities for your business, and potential partnerships. Really, people, especially right now, in particular in 2025, it is very high noise, very low signal. It's very difficult. We're kind of back to the 90s. Everybody's back to word of mouth. And we really want to meet each other, know each other, look each other in the eye before we can build relationships and kind of make these deals. We're moving a little bit past that everything's digital and that's fine kind of era. We're back to connection. And so that's good because that means that there are lots of opportunities for you if you are in a situation to look around, to be able to attend events, to go ask and listen. Also consider aligned interest. This one is one that the people I advise and work with kind of struggle with the most at first, but once it clicks, it clicks. And it's really who wants the same things to happen as I do. And so an example from our previous slide that we'll go check out is, of course, in this eco-friendly and eco-branded market, the people that also want reusable food containers to happen are composting services, our other eco-branded facilities, our eco-branded lawmakers and organizations. Those are the same people that want more people to use reusable food containers. So no matter what your industry, you're going to have, no matter what your niche is, there are going to be other people. You may have to kind of, again, blow it open a little bit, think outside the box, crack open your criteria, but you can absolutely find bare minimum collaborative competitors. And so I say this, it does not seem like it doesn't seem obvious right off the bat that a competitor could be collaborative, but we literally do it all the time. Very specifically at TMAC, we partner manufacturers all the time that are working in the same space and may even genuinely overlap in service or product, but often they're able to partner on producing a new product or exchange best practices, or come together where they determine dividing lines of I have this region, you have this region. All of those things are possible, and all of those things really, it's your ecosystem. You can build it. And so I'll also put on here 2 other bullet points. One of those is be available and ready to move. I cannot emphasize that one enough. Really find people that are already at tables. Listen to those conversations, join in on those conversations. If you overhear that people are moving in a certain direction or that they're moving in your direction, be ready to grab them. So an example, a very simple, or if you find a resource that you come across, that's a better example. Very simply, MEP, we're the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. If you qualify for our program, and we'll go over this in a second, but if you qualify for our program and you want to take advantage of it, you have to have a qualifying DUNS and NAICS. So very simply, without needing to know what that means in this moment, if you find a resource and it has qualifications before you can take advantage of it, make sure you start getting those qualifications in line as you're engaging with that resource so that you can grab it. Also, last one, this trademark is a bit of a joke, but internally here at TMAC, we've been pushing this very hard. Reputation leads to revenue. Overwhelmingly. Again, it is very high noise, very low signal right now. It is very difficult to find the person that you are looking for that has exactly what you need. And so finding other partners, just meeting people in your community, meeting people in your space that will advocate for you when you're not in the room, or that might recommend you for a job if it's not exactly a good fit for them. Those are I am seeing daily so much value pass and get exchanged that way. Literally, $30,000 handshake deals just because people are available and they've heard of each other before. So these are some bullet points. We're going to come back to these again. Right now, we're going to start looking at some more specific resource types. So before we do that, I want to establish give you all a little bit of context about the different types of resources. And then we're going to look at TMAC as an example of a resource. And then I'm going to leave y'all with a very long list of specific resources that all have links and some advice on how they exist and how to engage them. So, important note here, and I cannot emphasize this enough. How a resource is funded determines what it does and who it works for. Because whoever funds the resource, and this is true of any entity, but I'm talking about resources at this moment, but genuinely, this is true of any entity. It is going to follow the money. Every human, every organization, every institution follows the money. How it is determined, how it is funded determines what it does and who it works for. So we're going to look at some groups of different types of resources and programs. One of those groups is federal and state programs. Separately, federal programs are funded by congressional appropriations. State programs are funded by state appropriations. In both cases, that means that they're going to be reviewed and voted on. And so they're responsible to not only to their mandates, but to the elected representatives that voted on them. And so if you want to influence those organizations, you can do that not only by working with them directly, but also by working with their funders. Nonprofits and NGOs, separate, are funded by donations, grants, program fees, and events. Nonprofits can have tons of, and NGOs can have tons of funding mechanisms or revenue mechanisms. They can do classes, they can do almost anything a business does, but they are granted nonprofit status in that they don't pay sales tax by the IRS and then whoever is their Secretary of State. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of examples for Texas in here. I will try to, as much as possible, keep this in an America-wide framing, but please don't feel free, pop those in the Q&A if you have something more specific like that. So nonprofits and NGOs are also responsible to their mission and theoretically working towards a public good. Then when you get a little more local, though there are these at the national level as well, chambers of commerce and industry associations. So yeah, by local here, I mean more local to your sector. So chambers of commerce, they are membership organizations. They're responsible to their members. There's a national one, there's one in every state, and then you're also going to have local chambers of commerce. And again, they're membership organizations. They're not broken down by sector, and they're just broken down by region, and they're typically open to anyone who does business or lives in that area. Industry associations, similar, they're going to be broken down by industry sector, not by geography, but they are membership organizations and they are responsible directly to your members. When you're engaging organizations like this, most of the time they will have events that you can attend for free or as a guest. So you can go check it out, check out who's there and see if this is something that actually provides value or has a path forward for you before you have to actually full on sign up and engage directly that way. Economic development departments. So we're going to talk about the last two groups here, economic development departments and economic development corporations. Totally separate things. Economic development departments are local government. So those are housed either as your city or I've seen it sometimes as county budgets by those local taxes. So they're very tied to the geography. And then often they will also go after grants or they might have service fees if they provide certain services like wastewater, that kind of stuff. So they are responsible to all city residents and all the companies in that geography and are guided by the city leadership codes and strategic plans, as well as city council. So economic development departments are a local government arm. In that sense, they're not regulators. I've never met an economic development department that was looking to regulate industry in their or deter industry in any way in their sector. They are all there to be partners. They're all there to help increase growth, increase revenue, increase jobs. That is literally part of their mandate for their areas. Economic development corporations, similar. They actually have a similar mandate and they do operate in the same geographic sector. They're not always tied to a city. Economic development corporations, I've seen, especially in Texas, a lot of them get larger. And then also, by the way, this is an important note, in Texas, they're called economic development corporations. They're called that in about 20-ish states. Other states call them something else, but this is essentially what you're looking at. It's an independent organization that is independent from the city usually, but is funded by city and county or sometimes state sales tax, depending on how your state does it. Their creation is, especially in Texas, their creation is approved by voters. And then in Texas, we have a type A and type B. That's not universal to all states, but this is where you can go literally Google, what is the Economic Development Corporation of my state, of my county, of my area, and you can learn this kind of information. I absolutely encourage you, shortchange it, use AI, just double check everything that a chatbot tells you. And an important note here for our Texas people is just that the amount of annual funding in an economic development corporation and what that funding means to you is lots of time for economic development corporations, that funding is incentive projects. So that may be to help you with workforce if you need to train workers. That may be to help you with building out a new facility or getting into a new facility or upgrading parts of your current facility that needs to be upgraded. And sometimes they can even be used on product development and our research and development and other kinds of stuff like that. So this is a broad range of funding and funding types, but all of them are with a focus of helping create more business and generate more revenue for the people that they are accessible to, for small business in America, quite literally. Which brings me to TMAC. Okay, so we are the Texas Manufacturing Assistance Center. We pretty much do what it says on the label. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, like I said, but because we're using us as an example. So TMAC is the Texas representative of the MEP National Network. We are a nationwide network. It is a Department of Commerce program that is administered by NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So there are 51 MEP centers in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. And then Texas is so large that we actually have several regions in and of ourselves. About half of MEP centers are organized as independent entities. About half of them are partnered with a state university. So in that sense, they are all in one way or another a not-for-profit organization. We are one such that is partnered with a state university. We're hosted out of UT Arlington. We are actually officed out of the UTA Research Institute, which is where I am now. And then we have 7 other universities that we partner with for our regional offices. So all this is to say that we have the advantage of a very large network of expertise, resources. grants funding, just knowledge and best practices that we can really help manufacturers with. We have over 50 staff statewide. The majority of those are housed up here in North Texas, just because that's where the base award is, and that's where a huge chunk of manufacturing in Texas is as well, though it is growing out and building out in the state. We also we are charged, we are mandated. So this is an important note. Again, when you're looking at a resource, you want to look at its funding. So that's its funding source says what it can do and who it should do it for, and then see what the actual rules that they are to abide by. So our mandate is to work with small to mid-sized manufacturers, though of course we can help tier ones and larger manufacturers, and we do all the time, because that's part of helping their suppliers and helping their suppliers be able to have and keep that business with that large buyer. So we work with small to mid-sized manufacturers. Our goal really is to help them with anything that they might need help with. So we have everything from product development to process development to lean for cash flow. We help lean up your processes. That's something that we do on a daily. Workforce development, help you find new staff, help you develop apprenticeship programs, really anything under that bracket. And then we also do quite a bit in regulatory. So whether it's AS 9100, ISO 13485, whether you're in aerospace or medical or whatever, we help you navigate and get up to where you need to be with certifications. And then an important note about us is that because we're administered by NIST and we're a Department of Commerce program, we're not graded on the amount of revenue that we bring in. So we work pretty much like a normal consulting firm, but we're able to provide our level of expertise at this drastically lowered cost, because we're essentially kind of subsidized by the Department of Commerce and by Congress that votes for us to do this work in the community. And so what's really cool about that, we're not graded on the revenue we bring in, we're graded on the impact that we have for manufacturers, and manufacturers report that directly to NIST. We are not involved in the tallying of those metrics whatsoever. And so these are the metrics just for TMAC. Since we've been around for about 30 years. And again, as you can see, this is our mandate determines what we focus on and who we can help. And so another thing on here is we also, we have definitely a huge focus on sustainability. One thing that I like about it, and one thing that I encourage other people, this is another thing this can kind of just crack your brain open a little bit, because this is good for well beyond manufacturing. That 40 million at the bottom there is real numbers in dollars that we have saved actual manufacturers, not counting impact reports. That is what we have pulled from either sensors or from actual tracking projects where we have implemented change that has reduced the amount of water they're using, reduced the number of times a compressor runs, all these little efficiency changes, and it really can add up long term. So that's just another note. I'm going to speed this up just a little bit over here. So this is the impact for Fort Worth, Texas. I use Fort Worth because we are based out of Fort Worth. That's where the UTA Research Institute is. And again, this is just impacts that were reported by Fort Worth-based manufacturers from 2019 to 2023. So as you can see, we're an impactful program. It's actually very cool. I'm very proud to work for TMAC and to be part of this program. And personally, I believe there's huge value into bolstering our U.S. supply chain and helping manufacturers become more resilient, efficient, and profitable, because our U.S. manufacturers are U.S. businesses. They employ U.S. people, our neighbors, and in many cases, they supply the DoD, the military, TxDOT, some of our basic infrastructure that we all take for granted that keeps us safe and keeps us moving. So it's a very cool space to work in. So another thing to look at with a resource is, again, our funding and our mandate determines who we can help and how. So for us, who counts as a manufacturer for the MEP system, and this is for MEP nationwide, it's determined by NAICS code. So you must have both a DUNS number and then a qualifying NAICS code attached to that DUNS number to qualify for MEP assistance. So what does that mean? Your DUNS number, hopefully everyone on this call knows what a DUNS number is and has it. But if not, there's a quick link here. They are free. It does not take that long to get. And DUNS is a really important database because it is, especially for MEP, but also I happen to know for Apex accelerators and some of our other, what we might consider sister programs out of other federal departments. This is literally the data that the government looks at and that we look at when we're designing programs, when we're figuring out how to take the money that we've been allocated and best spend it to have the most impact towards our mission in our community. And so if you're not in DUNS, then you're not in MEAS, which is in our database. We don't know you exist. And so in many cases, you want to be in the database, whatever your government is looking at, whether that's local, state, or federal. You want to be in that database and you want to make sure that it is up to date with correct information, because that is part of having your voice heard. NAICS codes. They are 6-digit classifying codes. Really, they're just Canada and Mexico also use them. This is big on SAM.gov if you've ever done any work for the federal government or you're looking into doing work for federal government, but also at the city and state level. NAICS codes is how all government procurement, local and up, is organized. And literally, it just codifies the function that your business performs. So for manufacturing, there's a whole bunch of them. For every service that you could possibly provide, there is a NAICS code. And so you want to make sure you go to census.gov, research your NAICS, type in your keywords of what you do, just look at the definitions, see if that applies to you. You don't need to add extra NAICS, would never encourage anyone to do that. But if it is something that you do, and especially if it's part of your regular bread and butter business, make sure that is on your DUNS profile. Definitely make sure it's in SAM.gov if you're in that space. So these are the current qualifying MEP NAICS codes. It started back in the program with mostly the concentration on just that 31 through 33, which is hardcore manufacturing. But then we've added other parts of the ecosystem, as you can see here. So these are all services and adjacent to manufacturing that really build the manufacturing ecosystem and build the manufacturing sector. And manufacturing is so heavily reliant on this infrastructure that you kind of can't do it without it. So these are our qualifying NAICS codes. And what does that get you? Bare minimum, it gets you any of our no-cost services. It gets you a meeting with one of our advisors, potentially multiple meetings, and whatever we can do for you, we put that up front. We are a federal program. We are a resource. We exist to help. And so we try to do that as much as possible. We tell people, take advantage of us. Please use us. Our metric is on how many different manufacturers we assist in a year. So that is our goal, is to provide the most value to the most manufacturers as possible. Because again, that is our mandate and that is our funding source and that is our oversight. Also, something I'll point out here, Texas Manufacturing Network, since we're talking supply chains, this is something that we're building. It's exclusive to manufacturers. All MEP centers are building an arm of it, but so they are interconnected nationally. And especially now as Build America, Buy America, BABA, if you've heard of it that way, and some other regulations and funding sources come down, and as the economy, as we start seeing more development and we start seeing more infrastructure being built up, this is really going to come into play where suppliers need to be able to connect directly with each other without a middleman involved at all and work it out themselves. And so that's one of the, obviously, supply chain is going higher and higher on the list. So I hope everybody here is with me here still. We're going to take a brief tour now through what is absolutely an abridged list of resources and what they can do for you. And as we go, I'll try and notate also how you can engage with them. So again, this is not comprehensive. This is meant to give you a picture of what's out there and try to give you some tools and a framework for engaging with these resources, finding them, and identifying the pieces of your ecosystem, your supply chain. So we're going to start with federal and national, and then go to state, and then go to local. Remember that some of these are going to repeat. But don't worry if you get confused. The PowerPoint is there, and you can always Google. So big one, hopefully that all of you are familiar with, is the U.S. Small Business Administration. There is a lot more coming out of the SBA in the next few years. So that's pretty exciting. And then also I will note for all of the resources here, so we have a title, we have a logo so that you can recognize it really quickly. and then also how funded, how they can help, and then maybe an example, if applicable, and the website with a direct link there. So you can find out more information on your own at your own pace, but it gives you some context for what we're looking at here. There is a new Made in America manufacturing initiative by the SBA. So they just announced several point plans with that will have some significant impact. I think the biggest is expanding the working capital program. That's really going to kind of change the game for some of our smaller manufacturers. And definitely, if you are a small business, are looking at getting into a small business, if you're not working with your local SBA office, you're leaving resources on the table, because bare minimum, any of the resources that I'm showing you, they know other people. And so it's really, really good, if possible, for them to know you as well. U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So I mentioned that the Chambers of Commerce, they exist at all those levels. Still a membership organization, but that's also at the different levels, that's going to determine on who they work with. One of a big chunk of a thing that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce does is providing advocacy and networking opportunities. So, but they're working at the U.S. level, so that's going to be providing advocacy and networking opportunities at the U.S. level. So at the federal level, at government level, and it also, you're talking international industry, nationwide industry at that point. But they do also maintain like the Small Business Data Center, which has, if you're a data-oriented person and you like having more input points on your map and on your ecosystem, that's a great place to go. Economic development. Sorry, some of my display is covering my hair. All right, the EDA. They're a Department of the federal government, excuse me, funded through congressional appropriations. They can, they're more of an indirect help, and some of the other examples on here are going to be the same way, where they might have resources, like we were just talking about, they might have resources that for you, if adding extra data points is helpful, then go for that. If you're in a small business, and if you're in a small business, and if you've ever heard of SBIR or SITR, SBIR, STTR, those are programs that's basically a department, a program within each department of the federal government has a program that is targeted towards developing innovation and developing technology, and really burgeoning American innovation in their sector for whatever it is that they need. And so it's literally every department of government has one of these. I was recently at a Defense Tech Connect conference, where they did a reverse pitch for SBIR sitters, and the links to those pitches is here. Again, that's probably not a resource that you're going to be able to just jump on and activate. This is opening your mind to what's out there. But if you're anywhere in product development or research, SBIR program is really interesting. SBIR was the start of 23andMe, which is currently very topical. Roomba, even iRobot, they got their start with SBIR. So there's if you're an established company that's maybe looking into developing a new business unit, options there. And then just some other programs where same thing, getting into, these are resources at the federal level, might not necessarily be as applicable for everyone. Like the Export-Import Bank of the United States or the International Trade Administration, you would really only need to mess with those if you are in manufacturing and you're looking at imports and stuff. So there are other programs though, depending on your, like, say if you have a business running a barber shop or a bakery or any other small business or like a cafe service provider, or where it's like a restaurant or something like that, you're still going to have programs like this that will affect your, or that play in your space, and that might be a resource for you or have an opportunity to influence something you do. So sorry, I will move a little bit more quickly on here because I want to make sure we have time for questions. So state level resources, there's the Texas Economic Development Corporation and also the Texas Economic Development Council. Again, another note on that, be aware of your acronyms. There's lots of acronyms in this industry and in economic development. So just make sure that you're actually hitting the acronym that you intended to. Texas Workforce Commission, definitely helpful for if you need employees or you need to get your workforce up. There's a workforce commission in every state. Same thing, there's going to be a comptroller of your state. There's going to be an association of businesses in your state. And then regional, city, and community level resources, same thing. So you're going to be looking at your city, your county, your region, however they do it. The SBA has programs nationwide at the state level and at the county and city level. So one of those examples is small business development centers. And in some areas, like for instance, in Fort Worth, our SBDC is housed with our SCORE center. So a lot of times these will come together, but not always. They might exist separately. So the Small Business Development Center, they're pretty much do what they say on the label. They're kind of like us. They have a wide breadth of expertise and stuff that they can help with. Lots of times they don't provide direct funding, but they help with counseling, training, advice, and they also will help you get into SCORE. SCORE is awesome. It stands for, it was a Council of Retired Executives, basically. And originally when it was established, and it just partners small business owners and entrepreneurs with local retired executives or other business veterans. So they're people that are working in typically your space, your region, and your sector that have been through a lot of what you're going through and a lot of what you will go through and can absolutely help you avoid some of the bigger pitfalls. Councils of government are important in Texas. In other states, they're organized differently, but these are often your regional local governments will work together in some kind of consortium. Those typically end up more on the regulation side, and there's less way to interact with them in the public, but they're good touch points to pay attention to, and often you could submit comments to different conversations and regulations that they're facilitating. So I'll just go through here. Regional trade, the same way that you're gonna have a national trade industry, you will have a regional trade industry. Those are great sources of really where you can meet, network, find partners, find new customers, and really find new opportunities. In Texas, they're super, super active. And then regional and city chambers, same thing. Chambers of commerce, especially in Texas, they're very, very deeply connected to the community. So most of them also operate community outreach programs where they do things like support baseball teams and support the schools, but they also help with workforce pipelines, and they also help with deregulation or getting past rezoning and getting past certain zoning issues and things like that. So these organizations can be very active and can be very helpful. I have never, for a city economic development department, and in most of these cases, in order to engage with them, just email them. Go to their website, email them, pick up the phone, call them, whatever you're more comfortable with. Find an event that they're hosting to go to. With your economic development department, I would absolutely say, go ahead and introduce yourself. If you haven't met them yet, meet them now. They know people, they can introduce you to people, they know how the region is moving, they have state level awareness, all kinds of stuff that is really helpful to have access to. And then same thing at your local economic development corporation. So I put this one on here as an example. Fort Worth Economic Development Corporation is actually called a partnership. So it's not always going to be called that. That's the technical legal name of the type of entity that it is. But it's partnership, whatever the name is, it's this kind of entity that exists to help reinvest in businesses in the community, help promote businesses in the community, help them partner, and help build new infrastructure for them as well. So coming back, again, that was not a comprehensive list. There are many, many more resources out there. I could not possibly know about or cover them all. Hopefully this gives you kind of an idea of how to find some more of your resources and access them. And then just hitting these highlights again, You are building your supply chain, you're building your food chain, and excuse me, you're also attempting to build your ecosystem. So everyone in your ecosystem, including you, should be following the money. You should be following where the pull is. You should be letting the market pull you. And then you should talk to everyone in your supply chain. Whoever your customer talks to and spends money with immediately before coming and spending money with you, and then immediately after spending money with you, you need to be talking with those people. You need to be building partnerships with them. You need to be building products, collaborations, events, whatever. But whatever process chain you're in part of for your customers, you need to know all the steps in that chain and be available and be ready to move. And reputation leads to revenue. You need to have a good reputation with every person on every step in that chain. So thank y'all. Hope you're still with me. We have a few minutes now for Q&A. I'm going to leave my contact info on here. This is my specific contact info, and then that's also TMAC's info right there. If you want to find your local MEP center, literally just Google NIST MEP, and the whole list of all 51 centers will pop up with contact info right there.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany. That was wonderful. Much appreciated. We do have a few questions. Well, it looks like I got one right now. It says, hello all. I am a Missouri automobile dealer based in Kansas City, Missouri for 37 years. We also buy and sell electric vehicles and distributor of charging stations. Would an out-of-state vendor qualify for funding financial assistance? Thank you.
Could you repeat the beginning of the last sentence? Sorry, Curtis, it broke up.
Yeah, no problem. They stated that they was from Missouri. They've been an automobile dealer for 37 years in Kansas City, Missouri. They also buy and sell electric vehicles and a distributor of charging stations. Would an out-of-state vendor qualify for funding and financial assistance?
Okay. So no, you will not qualify for me, but Missouri does have its own MEP, have its own MEP center. And that actually brings up a really good point, and I will go ahead and demonstrate that now. So for instance, Massachusetts every MEP center is jealous of Mass MEP because they're the best funded, because the state of Massachusetts uses them as their essentially re-granting arm to sort of vet and validate their workforce funding pool, for which they have very large. They give out 200K grants at a time. So Texas Workforce Commission is not structured the same way. So for instance, we often work with manufacturers that have assembly in one city or state, and then distribution or manufacturing in another state. And so we're often working together with MEP centers. And unfortunately, sometimes in one state, there'll be more resources available than in another. And so in some ways that we've worked that is we'll have them come in and the state that has more resources, that's where all the training will be done, because sometimes legitimately that's what actually lowers the cost. So for you being in Kansas City and looking for financial assistance, specifically for Missouri, I would say get with your Missouri MEP for sure. Also look up your local Apex Accelerator. Those are formerly called PTAPs. So those are procurement technical assistance centers. They help you get into government procurement. So those are other good sources where they have awareness of funding availability. Also, and lots of times can help you meet other people to sell to as well. Other customers. And I would say, yes, get with your MEP center. They're going to be your absolute best first point touch of contact. And also your economic development department for your area. Just go to your city, look up on your city website, whoever is in economic development for your region. They're also going to have awareness of more specific grants that you would have access and qualify for. So hope that gives you some resources. Sorry. Thanks.
That was good. Thank you. Next question. How can a small business with little or no past experience leverage these type of resources? Easy.
Literally just go talk to them. So if you have You don't really, for most of these cases, you're not going to need to demonstrate past experiences. That's going to be if you're going after like a specific kind of grant funding, where this is where it's called a grant and there's an application process and often an application period. And sometimes they're competitive, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just first come, first serve if you qualify. And literally just go look at him, go read about it, go talk to him, ask what are the qualifiers for this? How do I qualify for this? And how can I access it? Because people, especially with your economic development department, but any NGO, any nonprofit, this is what they get paid to do. They're paid to be a resource. That's what I get paid to do. I'm paid to be a resource for y'all and to help promote y'all and connect, if at all possible, with things that will help you grow your business, that will help you find other resources even. So I think we're good. Hopefully that covers it.
It did. Thank you. I much appreciate it. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. You did such a good job with your presentation and providing those resources. Ain't no questions to be coming in right now. So definitely thank you. Those resources was very helpful for the small business community. You know, I'm looking in the chat now, I see some thank yous, great information. Much appreciated, much appreciated. So thank you once again, Brittany. Thank everybody for attending. I hope that everybody have a wonderful day. Please complete the survey at the end of this webinar. Let us know how we did today. We do value your feedback. So please, please let us know how we did today. And over to you, Amanda.
Yes, thanks again to our presenter today, Brittany Rosenberg, Business Development Partner at the Texas Manufacturing Assistance Center, for a very informative presentation and discussion. Please complete the brief survey after today's session, as Mr. Brandon stated. We also encourage you to continue to visit the Direct Access Programs event page for upcoming programs that may be of interest to you and your network at vetbiz.va.gov/events. To everyone who joined today's session, thank you on behalf of VA OSDBU and Strategic Outreach and Communications. This now concludes today's session.